Hola y buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Don't worry, it's not bilingual. That's all the Spanish I know. Okay, Maxi and I are very pleased to be here from Namibia to share some of the stories of conservation there. And we'd very much like to thank Vance and the WILD10 organizers for bringing us here, and also for letting us be parts of such a distinguished panel and with such a distinguished chair for this group. It's a real pleasure. Okay, now I have to acknowledge that I'm technologically limited, so I hope this works. Oh, it did, but after some correction. Okay, the name of our presentation is Communal Conservancies in Namibia, Empowering Communities Through Market-Led Conservation. And Maxi and I are going to do somewhat of a twiddle-dee, twiddle-dum type of presentation where we go back and forth, where I will talk about the context of the program, Maxi will talk about the achievements and the impacts, and then I'll summarize a little bit on the economics and the challenges before the program. The program that we're going to talk about is largely based on the communal conservancies, and it's actually something that has been around for a while. The program's been operating from its infancy almost 30 years ago when a Namibian NGO called Integrated Rural Development and Nature Conservation started working with ex-poachers to create community game guards. That's IRDNC, and that was in 1983. And that program through the years has evolved into a national community-based natural resources management program of which communal conservancies are the centerpiece. The program is premised upon smart partnerships between government, private sector, communities, and NGOs. It's also premised upon empowering communities through responsibilities and rights. And it's also based upon building upon the knowledge and the traditional values of communities. And we work with 14 different tribal groups in Namibia, of which 4 of them are indigenous communities. There's been a lot of achievements in the program so far, but it hasn't always been easy. And if we go back to 1983, Namibia at that time was under the governance of South Africa and an apartheid system. And the apartheid system wasn't only bad for people, it was bad for wildlife. It led to no rights over wildlife for communities. It led to alienation of people from the wildlife, and predictably, it led to poaching. We had commercial poaching taking place around rhino and elephant, and we had meat poaching taking place around other species, to the point by the early 1990s, mid-90s, much of Namibia and the communal areas was absent or threatening to be absent of wildlife. Fortunately, what we did have in Namibia at that time, even though it was an apartheid government, is we had incredible visionary people. And 2 of those people are here now, Garth Owen Smith, Margie Jacobson. Would you please stand up? I know they're out here somewhere. These are conservationists that have risked their life and their personal safety in order to stand by the principles of working with people and communities. So they are the pioneers of CBNRM in Namibia. Another tremendous person that we had that shared the vision of bringing back the wildlife to the people was our first minister after independence in 1990. His name was Nico Bessinger. And he assisted all the stakeholders, NGOs, communities to help realize that dream of bringing wildlife back to the community by passing legislation in 1996 that devolved the rights to wildlife and wildlife benefits to communities that formed conservancies. And that allowed us to tap in and create organized groups of communities to not only harness their cultural and traditional values around wildlife, but to as well tap into markets that allow us to use market-led conservation in Namibia. And this is where we use market forces to our advantage instead of fighting them, and we can tap into global to local type of opportunities. And what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Maxi, and let Maxi tell you about the achievements and the impacts of this program. No, the right one.
Thank you, Chris. The market-based conservation that we are talking about is an income stream in terms of enterprises that we have created over a period of time. And it is actually mostly tourism-based. It's consumptive and non-consumptive tourism. On the consumptive side, we have around 48 joint venture hunting contracts that are signed with these communal conservancies. And on the ecotourism side is the joint venture lodges that also create income. And we have around 34 of those contracts that are signed. We also have the low type of activities in terms of tourism. And these are around 60 community campsites that are run nationally by communal conservancies. We also have other spin-offs from tourism, such as community guides that take tourists around, tourism information centers, and traditional homesteads. In terms of those achievements and what the impacts that Chris just talked about, we use 3 thematic areas to be able to address or implement our activities. And the first one is the natural resource management, which I will in a minute just share with you what it entails. And then we also have the institutional development and governance. And then the last one is looking at the issue of livelihoods, which includes the business side. In terms of natural resource management, one of the impacts that I want to share with you is the increasing wildlife populations in Namibia. The other one is looking at the large landscape connectivity that we have created over a period of time. Let me just share with you some data in terms of the game population trends. And I'm going to share with you 3 species, which is the elephant, the black rhino, and the lion. In terms of the lion, this is a national figure. Chris was talking about the difficulties we had prior to 1990, and around 1995, when the program started, we merely had around 14,000 elephants. When the program then started, today, 2012, we have over 20,000 elephants, and that is national. Thank you. In terms of the black rhino, and this is just coming from one area in Namibia, and that is the northwest part of the country. As you all know, black rhino was close to extinction. What we have done with conservancies is that in 2012, over a period of time, we have one of the largest free-roaming rhino populations in communal areas. And so, I can't give you the number for some reason, but there's quite a lot of rhino now in the northwest of the country, so that is just one region. In terms of lions, there is a huge range of expansion in terms of the lions, and this is also just one part in the northwest of the country. We started plus minus with 25 lions moving in the northwest, and most of them came from a national park moving in between the communities. Today we have plus minus around 150 of those lions, and they are roaming freely in some of these areas. Just to show you, in terms of conservancies and what has been some of the natural resource impacts, we have, our target when we started this program was to try and register 80 conservancies on communal land. To date, we have around 79 conservancies that are registered in communal land. That has created quite a huge landscape connectivity, especially if you look the brown parts, the darker parts, those are our national parks. And then the lighter brown parts, those are the registered conservancies. So we have created that connectivity between parks, and we have opened up corridors in terms of wildlife movements between parks and just open areas, which is the communal areas. In terms of land under conservation, on communal areas alone, we have around 19% of conservation that is being covered. But then in general, nationally in the country, between communal conservancies, commercial conservancies, game farms, protected areas, that is around 44% of land under conservation nationally in the country. So we are very proud of that. We are moving close towards 46%, and our target, we are looking at 50%. And so we also, I'm actually encouraged by this workshop that within this system, we will probably give half of that to wilderness. What has been the income in terms of why are communities taking place? Why are they so, why are they taking part in terms of this conservation program? It's the income that is being generated. And this income, when you look at the blue parts, started way back in 1998 when we registered our 4 conservancies. The blue part is income that has increased over years of cash income that goes directly to them. This is employment, goes directly to them in terms of cash income. The green parts is non-cash income, and that is, just to give you an example, for instance, meat that goes back to the community, which is a benefit to them. The red is income outside the conservancies of areas that are not yet registered for conservancies. This is just a breakdown in terms of where most of the income comes from, and most of it comes from photographic tourism, followed by hunting and all the other activities afterwards. What does that mean? It's not just income, it also contributes towards the GDP of our country. Around 313 million that just go towards the economics in terms of net income to the country. $1 US is around 10 Namibian dollars. So it's around 43.6 million net income in terms of economics. In terms of rural development, it has created quite a lot of opportunities that was not there before. For instance, creation of employment that I talked about, schools, clinics, all these are being supported by conservancies, provision of transport, gardens, improved nutrition, but also mitigating human-wildlife conflict, because I just talked about the predators that has increased. That will cause human-wildlife conflict. So there is a mitigation that is being created as part of those conservancies. But the most important thing is the improvement of natural resources. Enhancement of food security, that was not there before, but it was probably there, but not as much, and conservancies are contributing. On your right-hand side, you see communities receiving cash, and that means quite a lot of them living in rural areas. I talked about the lodges, creating career paths for our communities that are living far from towns. So they have a career, but they also have a job. The meat that I just talked about, and having gardens that was not there before.
Okay. Just quickly, some of the governance benefits is that we have 79 democratically organized communities. This is a vast contrast from the pre-apartheid days. But what's really significant about that is that people now have a voice. They can stand up and talk about their own needs, and because of the income that's being generated, they have resources to promote their own destinies in terms of development. Question mark. Has this been a good investment? There's been over $125 million US put into this program. And if you look at the graph, the blue area in the back is the investment by donors and government since independence in 1990. And that investment total is about 1.2 billion Namibian dollars total. The brown bars are the response as a result of that investment. And that's the net national income that's being generated. And what's really significant about this graph is that it took quite some time for the investment to even become equal, or the returns to become equal with the investment. 2002, and ever since then, we've seen increases in the returns, and we've seen decreases in the cost of operating and maintaining the program. What we basically have is a 21% rate of net national, or net internal rate of return, excuse me. So our donors really appreciate and value what this is doing. Similarly, it's built into the national development plans, it's built into the national poverty alleviation strategy, and to the national rural development strategy and our Vision 2030. It's not only seen as conservation, it's linked directly to development. Nonetheless, there are many challenges, and that's a whole nother presentation. These are just some of the points that are quite frequently coming up. Number one, we have a lot of conservancies, 79. There's another 15 or 20 on the way. There's a need to increase the viability of these. Some are really viable, others are just marginally viable. There's a weak institutional capacity in many of these conservancies. Some are generating income of $200,000 US, managing those finances and making sure that they're transparently accounted for. Inadequate support capacity. This program has become so popular that we can't keep up with the service provision. The NGOs, there are 9 of them working on it through the umbrella of NACSO, which Maxi coordinates, the private sector and government, but we can't keep up with the demands. There's a need for more effective and more efficient systems. But at the same time, we're facing a shortage of incomes because donors are leaving a middle income country like Namibia. So lastly, there's a range of other sustainability concerns, one of them being increased human-wildlife conflict. That's a double-edged sword. The fruits of our labor coming back to also haunt us. Then there's a need to get money to the household level. There's a whole range of land use conflicts and so forth. So in short, if you look at what's happened in the program, we've come a long ways, but we have much further to go. And we really thank you for the chance to share this with you. Thank you.